stands today, and in the nave of the soaring Romanesque church, the visitor will see 4 ancient tombs bearing painted effigies. These are the first Plantagenets. Henry II, famous for his quarrel with Archbishop Thomas Becket, and Henry's son, Richard the Lionheart, who became renowned as the greatest crusader in Christendom. There too is Isabella of Angoulême, the wife of Richard's brother, the notorious King John. And with them lies Henry's queen, Eleanor of Aquitaine, laid to rest in 1204 after an astonishing 82 turbulent years in this world. Who was Eleanor of Aquitaine? She was essentially a daughter of the south, the last in a long line of flamboyant and feared Dukes of Aquitaine, whose territory she inherited in 1137 at the age of just 15. Her lands comprised half of what is now France and stretched from the Loire to the Pyrenees and from the Atlantic Ocean to the Massif Central. Eleanor was reputedly one of the most beautiful women in Christendom and certainly one of the most fascinating. She was twice a queen, first to Louis VII of France and then to Henry II of England, and she bore 11 children altogether, among them 3 kings. Her daughters married great princes, and she may with truth, like Queen Victoria, be described as the grandmother of Europe. Historically, she was a very important heiress because the transfer of her lands on marriage, first to France and then to England, set the pattern for European diplomacy and warfare for the next 4 centuries. Eleanor was cultivated, headstrong, and imperious. At various times in her life, she exercised great power, and at others, being a woman, of course, she was reduced to a mere cipher. Above all, she managed to acquire, during the course of a life packed with many changes of fortune, a notorious reputation. And even today, legends about her still persist. When, in 1991, I suggested to my British editor that I write a biography of Eleanor of Aquitaine, I was told that the life of a woman who'd been dead for 800 years would not have the same appeal as a book on, say, the 6 wives of Henry VIII or Elizabeth I, because the sources just don't exist. And that's true. But despite the gaps in our knowledge about her, Eleanor of Aquitaine is still one of the towering figures of the Middle Ages, and indeed one of the most enduringly popular female figures in history. Well, I did get to publish my biography in the end after 8 years of persistence in 1999, and to my astonishment, I quickly discovered that an overwhelming number of readers were passionately interested in Eleanor. Every event was a sellout, with so many people having been inspired by Katharine Hepburn's dynamic portrayal of Eleanor in the 1968 film The Lion in Winter. And some told me they even made annual pilgrimages to the great Queen's tomb at Fontevraud. Others sent me photos of corbel heads in obscure French churches, or told me fascinating but scurrilous local legends about the number of illegitimate children Eleanor's supposed to have borne. And I wish to God I'd had them before I'd written the biography. In the end, Eleanor of Aquitaine, in Britain at least, turned out to be my best-selling history book to date. When I came to write Eleanor's life, I soon found out that what my then editor had said was very true. Because writing a medieval biography, particularly of a woman, is essentially the piecing together of fragments of information and trying to bind them into a cohesive narrative. But there will always be gaps that we cannot fill. It was while I was researching this biography that it occurred to me I wanted to write a novel about Eleanor, one in which I could develop ideas and themes that have no place in a history book, but which, based on sound research and educated guesses, could help to illuminate her life and explain her motives and her actions. Now, a historian uses such inventiveness at her peril, but a novelist has the power to get inside her subject's head and actually be her. And that can afford one insights that wouldn't be permissible to a historian, but can yet have a legitimate value of their own. A historian has to work within the strict constraints imposed by the source material and by credible speculation and inference. A novelist, however, is able to use her imagination to fill in the gaps and ask what if, although what she writes must be credible within the context of what is known historically about her subject. Yes, it's wonderfully liberating to be able to use one's imagination, but you cannot simply indulge in flights of fantasy as a historical novelist. That sells short both those who know nothing about the subject and those who know a great deal. You need to do lots of research. I know, because I do a huge program of events, and my readers regularly and forcefully tell me so, that people care that what they are reading in a historical novel is close to the truth, given a little dramatic license, of course, and the novelist's informed imagination. Because lots of people, me included, come to history first through historical novels, and many rely on the novelist to tell it as it was and to set the story within an authentic background with authentic detail. Well, 11 years on from the publication of my biography, I've finally been able to fulfill that dream of writing a fictional work about Eleanor of Aquitaine, and the result is this book, Captive Queen. It is closely based on historical facts, but because this is a novel, I have allowed myself some dramatic license, all explained in a very detailed note at the end. Eleanor's amorous adventures, for example, have been the subject of much learned conjecture among historians, but I think there was some substance to the allegations, as I've explained in my biography. The legends about Henry II's fabled mistress, Rosamond de Clifford, the tales of the labyrinth at Woodstock, and the gory details of her supposed murder belong to much later periods and are unfounded, but I've made some creative use of them here. And the descriptions of Henry II in a temper are, incredibly, based on eyewitness accounts, all this rolling in the straw and stuffing it into his mouth. It was a deliberate decision not to write a fictional account of the whole of Eleanor's life. I have to admit that among my chief inspirations were those two incomparable films, The Lion in Winter and Becket, and that what I really wanted to explore in this novel was the marriage between Eleanor and Henry II, not just their dynamic interaction over one explosive Christmas, as in The Lion in Winter, but the whole course of their relationship over a period of 37 years. In doing so, I feel I've been able to achieve insights into what might have gone wrong between them and explain what drove them to make a tragedy of their marriage. Writing this novel presented me with one of the greatest challenges of my career, to do justice to the character and the reputation of my fabled and celebrated subject. And it's my hope that my readers will find that for them, the book captures just something of the spirit of the real Eleanor of Aquitaine. I'm now going to read you a little